Hi everyone and welcome back. In this video we're going to look at models in Django. So according to the Django documentation, a model is a single definitive source of information about your data. It contains essential fields and behaviors for the data you're storing. Generally, each model maps onto a single database table. In this video we're going to look at models and how we can use them to describe the data in our database tables. So according to this documentation, a model is simply a class that inherits from Django.db.models. So we're going to look into how we can construct our model and how we can use our model to describe how a certain database table will be. We are seeing some of the attributes of each model. For example, each model inherits from this class. Each attribute of the model represents a database field. And with all this, we can actually use Django's generated database access API to make queries to our API. So Django has an ORM that allows us to create database tables using classes. Now the beauty of this is we don't have to write any sort of SQL. Therefore, we don't need to know that much SQL to be able to query our database tables in Django. So we're going to look into how to create these models and how we can query our database using these models. So let's get started. So we're going to be creating a model for the actual posts that we created. For example, we have these posts that can contain a title as well as an author. Now also going to add one extra field, which is actually going to be the content of that specific title. So let's get started. So I'm going to head over to our code. And within our code, I'm going to get to the post app, since that's the only app we are working with for now, but we shall look into how to create other models in the next videos. So I'm going to go to our posts app. I'm actually just going to close some of this. So for every app we create, we have a models.py module. So this models.py module is responsible for holding all our database model classes. So within our models.py, I am going to create our class of post. Now let me first model it out so that you can get a clear concept of what we're going to actually be constructing. So I'm going to create a class, and this class is going to be our post class. Now this post class will have a title, and this title will be a string. And we are also going to have an author. So this author is actually also going to be a string. Now we're going to have we're actually going to have the title, the author. Let me go to our vis.py right here. We're going to have the title, we're going to have an author, and we're also going to have the content. So I'll just add some content in here, and this content will also be a string of sorts. So in this case, we can add a string of sorts. Now you can also add an image, just like you can see here. So we can actually just say that we're going to have a thumbnail for each of the posts that we're going to create. So we can also add the thumbnail. Now this thumbnail will be a file, so it actually be an image field. So let's just say it's going to be an image field, but I will actually store a simple image of how of the specific database table or the posts that we shall create. So we're not going to look into detail about this, but in the next video we are going to actually be talking about how to upload these images. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create our class. Now this class is going to be our database model, and it's going to describe how our post table is going to be in our database. So I'm going to come and create a class. This class is going to be our post class, and it's going to inherit from. So one thing we've been told from the Django documentation is that each model class subclasses Django.db.model. So when you go back to our code, we have already imported from Django.db import models. So what we shall actually access is the model class from our models module in Django. Now after doing this, we're going to go ahead and basically write the fields or the attributes of this class. So we're going to begin with the title, and in our models module we can access the different kinds of fields, and these fields can explain what kind of data is going to go in this column. So each time we create a class that's a model and give it attributes, what we are actually doing is to create a table. For example, creating a table of posts, and this post table is going to have each attribute being the column for that specific attribute within our database. So I'm going to create a model, and this is actually going to be a model char field, which is a string field, and then the first attribute we shall specify is going to be the max length. So the max length is the maximum number of characters you can add onto a string field or a character field. And in this case, let's say that the longest title should be 225. And you can also provide the author, so the author is also going to be a models.char field, and then you can specify our max length to be, let's say, 45. Now after doing that, we shall add content, and this content is going to be models. In this case, what you shall say is models.text field, because you want quite a lot of text and you don't have to even specify the max length for this. Now we're going to look into how to add this thumbnail. So for now, what you can actually do is to say thumbnail. Let me add this field, so you can say thumbnail, and this is going to be equal to models dot. In this case, what you can do is to say models dot image field, and this image field takes in where we want to upload this, so we can specify upload to. Let me actually see. So we can say upload to, and in this case we can specify where we actually want to upload this specific thumbnail. So what I'm going to do is to specify that we want to upload this to images. Actually, let's just say we want to upload it to thumbnails. And after uploading this to thumbnails, then we can also specify a default in case you haven't provided this. So we shall come and say that our default image is actually going to be default.png. So once we have that, then right now we have created our model. So the first thing we're going to do is to create a migration. So each time we create a database model in Django, we need to create a migration, and the migration is going to basically keep the change that we've created in our database. Now each time we create a migration, we go ahead and use that migration to be able to generate that change within our database. So when you create a migration, it's a Python file, just like we're going to see. So let's go ahead and create our first migration. So I'm going to pull up my terminal right here, and we already have an error right here that we cannot use the image field because Pillow is not installed. So to install Pillow, I'll have to first stop our server with Ctrl and C, then write pip install. It's actually going to be pip3 since I'm on Linux, and I'll go ahead and install Pillow. So Pillow is the Python imaging library, and it's the one that's going to allow us to upload these images. So we cannot actually be able to use this image field without having installed Pillow. So after installing Pillow, I'm just going to come and run our server again, and now we are seeing that we have 18 unapplied migrations. So I'm going to stop our server. The first thing I'm going to do is to basically create a migration for this post model that we've created. I'll pull up my terminal and I'll run python3 manage.py, and then I'm going to run make migrations. And when you run make migrations, as long as there is a change in our database tables or we've created a new model, it's going to look for that change and then create an appropriate migration file for that specific post for model or any model that we may create. So I'm just going to run this command, and since we have this, so we have our migration actually stored in post/migration, and that migration file is called 0001 initial.py. So now head over to our migrations within our post app. We see we have this model file generated for us, and when we take a look at this model file, what you have is it's of class migration. So it basically specifies all the fields and the name of the table of that model we've actually created. So as you look here, we can be able to actually see we have an ID, a title, an author, the content, the thumbnail, and so on, basically describing which kind of model or database table we're going to create. So now that we've created this database table, the next thing we're going to do is to actually create it in our database. So Django already comes with some of its migrations that we haven't actually run. For example, if I run our server again, we're being told that we have 19 unapplied migrations and we have to apply them. So by running these migrations, we are going to actually be creating them in our database. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll stop our server and then run Python 3 manage.py and then migrate, and this will go ahead and create these tables in our database. So if you're wondering which kind of database we are using, when I was introducing our settings.py file, I talked about our database dictionary, and this basically explains that we are using our default database as db.sqlite3, which is a file-based database. So once you have this, then I'm going to go ahead and run our server again, and then we shall explore our database tables. So I'm going to do this with Python manage.py run server, and this is going to run our server, and I'm going to open up the Django shell. So the Django shell is simply the Python shell that gives us access to our Django so that you can be able to interact with our database models and do other things. So to access our shell, I run Python 3 manage.py and then shell, and that will actually open up a Python interactive console to help us to actually deal with our Django apps. So the first thing I'm going to do is to import our models as we've created them. So I'll do that with from. So we've created the posts app, and then we shall access the models module, and then I'm going to import our post model. So right after importing our post model, I'm going to go ahead and query for all the posts. So in this case, what I'll do is to say posts, and in this case what we shall have to do is to do post dot objects then dot all, and what we're actually doing here is searching or querying for all the posts in our database. So when I run this, if I say posts, in this case it's going to return an empty query set, meaning we haven't created any posts yet in our database. So for us to create a post, what we shall need to do is to create an object of type post and then finally save it to our database. Now to do this, I'm going to come and say new post, and this new post is going to be our post, and this post is going to have a title. So let's say the title for this is going to be Learn Django, and then we can also give an author. Now this author is going to be, let's say, John Doe. Sorry for that. Then maybe I'm going to give the content, so just going to give the content, and this content is going to be this is a simple introduction to the Django web framework. So right after creating our post, we can be able to access the different types of mail that we put onto this post. For example, sorry for this. So when I come right here, I can say new post, and then when I specify this, I can access the post title with new post.title. So that will give us new post title, and when we say new post dot author, still we shall access the post author. Now we can also go ahead and access the content, so I'll do the same thing with content. So I'll say new post.content, and that will bring for us the post content at that point. Now in case we want to update the name, we can say new post dot, let's say, the title, and we can actually just do that. We say new post.title equals to Django for beginners. Now keep in mind that we haven't yet saved this, so in this case if I say new post dot title, it actually returns Django for beginners. Now if we are to save this to the database, what we need to do is to just simply call new post dot save, and this will go ahead and basically commit everything to our database. So when I say new post.save and then we query for our posts, right now we see that our query set has one post, and this is actually showing us that it's a post object with an ID of 1. But if we want to generate a very friendly representation of our database objects, so to do that, I'll go back to our models.py module, and what I'll do is to create a simple method. So this method is going to be the string or str method, and it will take himself because it's going to run on every object that we shall be creating. Now this is responsible for generating a string representation of our object. So I'll do return, and then what I'll do is to just return self dot title, or actually what I'll do is to simply write an f string, and within this f string I'm just going to come and say post, and then I'll provide the title. So I'll use curly braces here, I'll close that, and after doing that I'm just going to go ahead and save. So right after doing this, when I save that, in this case we can be able to only access them and they will be shown to us via this kind of representation. But if I get out of our shell and run our shell again, so in this case I'll first import our post model. So I'll say from posts dot models, in this case I'm going to go ahead and import our post model, and after importing that, then I can say all posts, and I'll do this with post dot objects dot all, and when I say all posts, this is actually going to return a string representation of our object, and in this case we shall see the post title. So this actually makes it easy for us to have our posts returned to us in a very friendly way. So we can also look into how we can add other posts. For example, if I went ahead and added other posts, so I can come and say new post, and this new post is actually, so let me actually fix this. So we shall have new post, and this new post is going to be a post. So in this case we shall have a title, and our title in this case is going to be a basic Java script, and then we shall give the author, and in this case we shall say the author is going to be John Doe, and after we can also give the content. So I provide the content, and then the content is going to be, this is a beginner guide to, so in this case we shall say this is a beginner guide to JavaScript. So maybe I'll just provide JavaScript, and when I create that, then I can simply save this by saying new post dot save. So if I go ahead and basically query for all posts, we can now be able to see that we've actually had 2 posts created for us. So let's say we want to actually query for one post, so that we can query for one post by using this. So we can actually say post. So let's say we query for one post. So the Django ORM gives us an easy way. So we can just call the model class and then say objects, and then this gives us various fields, or actually gives us various methods that can allow us to query for what we want. So in this case we can use the get. So using get returns one object that has that specific attribute. For example, let's say if we wanted to search for the object that has a primary key or an ID of, let's say, 1, we can actually say post, and this will return our first post, which is actually going to be the first post that has the title of Django for beginners. Now if we run the same query, so let's say for the ID of 2, and then we run post, in this case it's actually going to return our JavaScript. So let's say we want to search for our title instead. Now what you can actually do is to say post 1 is actually going to be, let's say this is actually going to be post dot objects, and then in this case we're going to use a filter, and this filter takes in an attribute. So for example, in this case we can say title, and we can search for the title, and in this case we can say the title is going to be basic JavaScript. So once we have this, we can even specify what we want. So if I say .all, we want to return a query set of all the posts that actually have this title. So if I run post 1, this will return a query set, and let's say we want to run .first. So when I run post 1, this will actually return an individual post that has that specific attribute. We are going to look at more of this while we go on in our series, and I hope you've learned from this video